Welcome into the college football every game on the board podcast simulcast live on the WagerTalk YouTube channel. We got November 25th. It is Wednesday, the day before Thanksgiving, a full weekend of college football, and we're breaking down each and every game on the college football board with our first handicapper up, Mid-Major Matt. Welcome in. Happy Wednesday morning to you.
Yeah, happy Wednesday to you as well, Drew. We are still losing games at a decent pace here, but there are some action for Thursday and Friday, and that's what we've got today on the show.
Cool. And we got Thursday and Friday's games, like Matt just said, for this section. Then we'll just go right down the list here with three other handicappers right to follow, guys. So if you're watching live, welcome in. Tim on Twitter, Chad, Ashley Waite, all you guys on the WagerTalk YouTube channel. Feel free to chime in whatever you'd like in the chat box. We'll get it out to the watchers. Proud Babylonian, welcome in as well. And if you're watching on replay, feel free to drop a comment below. Always love what the watchers out there are thinking. But Mid-Major Matt, like we were just talking about off camera here, we did just lose a game and it was the top of the board, correct?
Yes, we just lost it literally a couple minutes ago, so that's unfortunate.
Okay, Colorado State Air Force is canceled. So we got one single game here on Thursday, 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific here. Fox Sports 1, Mid-Major Matt, New Mexico at Utah State. We're seeing New Mexico. Not very good Lobo team overall. In my opinion, they are improved over last year's version. Actually, the last half decade's version, most likely here. -6 in the hook, road favorites at Utah State, Logan, Utah, 51.5 being the total here, Matt.
So this is an interesting game for a couple of reasons. One, look, I watched the Utah State game for some reason a couple weeks ago, and there's talent there, but I mean, it's tough to watch this team when they play. They're off last week. They had their week off, and then they lose that Fresno State game 2 weeks ago, 35-16. They had a third string quarterback in, and the last couple of weeks, they've had some quarterback problems. The number one quarterback basically up and transferred. And I watched the end of the game. He was not happy with what was going on. He basically, was very frustrated with the offensive line, very frustrated with the play calls. Guys were dropping balls. And you could tell at the end of the game. And then he gets kicked off the team for violation of team rules. Andrew Peasley, who was supposed to be their backup, basically had COVID, and he is available now. He was cleared to play. So we'll see if that makes a difference. But then you've also got the offensive coordinator who's been quarantined with COVID. And look, there's a lot of reasons not to take Utah State, but the talent is there. They also had Devin Tompkins basically opt out of the season and is transferring out of the program. And then you look at this New Mexico team, and we talked about them, last time. And look, they did not show up against the Air Force, although I did have the under for the game, and it hit in that game. So that was good because I was very worried. Went to bed at 28-0 at halftime, and I thought it wasn't going to happen. And then, of course, Air Force fumbled a bunch of times. New Mexico is getting close, Drew, but the problem is, are they going to eventually get over the hump here, or are they just going to continue to struggle? They lose that 28-0 game, and before that, it was 7 at San Jose State, 6 to Hawaii, and 7 in Nevada. We don't know about the quarterback situation. Tavaka Tuiati did not practice on Monday. It'll be a game-time decision, so I don't know. It's a tough game, Drew. I don't have a great feel other than Utah State hasn't been good. New Mexico's been close to wins, but do you really want to take a team like this on the road who still hasn't figured out quite yet how to win games in a season like this?
Yeah, and the ultimate equalizer in this one, they are going to have to win by margin with that line being -6 in the hook. They're going to, in order for you to cash your ticket here, they're going to have to win by a full touchdown. You bring up the New Mexico quarterback issue. I think that's huge here, Mid-Major Matt. If he plays, I'm going to be on New Mexico. I think it's a huge drop off to the backup quarterback. It's a team I actually lost on last week. A personal bet here on New Mexico. I thought that the backup Hall would do fairly well. He did not. He really struggled throwing the ball down the field with accuracy, really the whole bit. So if New Mexico has a starting quarterback back, I like New Mexico in this one to go on the road to Logan, Utah, and come out victorious, likely by double digits if he does play. So let's move on to the Friday card here, Mid-Major Matt. Bunch of good games on Friday, by the way. A lot of the mid-major variety. Starting off here, 131, 132, the rotation number, 3:30 Eastern kick here. We're talking the war on I-4 in the Sunshine State on ESPN. UCF at USF, 67 here being the total in Raymond James, Mid-Major Matt. This is a heated rivalry. These two teams don't like each other. UCF -25. What, about an hour southwest of Orlando.
So I was ready to fade UCF in this game, thinking they were going to be hungover, nothing to play for, lose that game to Cincinnati. They put a lot into that Cincinnati game, and the way they lost it, they had their chances and they just couldn't come through. But then I also saw the stat that UCF is 1-7 in their last 8 games against the spread with teams with a losing record. But then I kept reading all the quotes and everything, and I don't know if this is just lip service from the players, but as you said, they genuinely don't like USF. And so it seems like if this was a Temple or if this was a other team, that maybe you could get a flat spot here, but this rivalry is so big. UCF has been a 20-point favorite 4 times this season, haven't covered a darn thing in any of those games. They've allowed those teams to score an average of 27.3 points per contest. And oh yeah, by the way, there's this massive caveat. There's this massive carrot that's out there. Is Mackenzie Milton going to play in this game? Is Mackenzie Milton going to start in this game? I mean, Dylan Gabriel was asked earlier in the week that there are surprises. And when he was basically asked about Mackenzie Milton, he said, oh, you may want to stay tuned a little bit. So here's the thing, Drew. I love UCF if they play Dylan Gabriel this whole game. And in terms of, I like their team total over. I like the game over. If Mackenzie Milton's starting and playing a lot of the game, I don't know if I want to get involved with UCF, but I don't know if they're going to let him play just one game, one quarter, one half. I don't know. One series, one play. It's something that is, I think, is a little bit of a wrench in this handicap here. On the USF side, they had the off week last week. They gave up 56 and a 56-21 loss to Houston. They've allowed 40 points or more 4 times this season. The offense is getting a little bit better for USF. We know that they play with up-tempo with Jeff Scott as their head coach here, Drew. So the over seems to be in play. The UCF over seems to be in play, but I also don't know how much Mackenzie Milton's going to play. What's your spies down there in Florida think about this one?
I don't know if I'd call them spies here, but people close to the program, I guess you could say, mid-major Matt. I don't know if I would put too much into Mackenzie Milton playing. I mean, it's going to be his first game anyway. It's not like Dylan Gabriel is a bad quarterback. I believe he's number 1 in total passing yards this season in college football. So I don't know if I would put too much into that. Just one player playing a quarterback position where actually the guy that's playing the position is playing very well. I would look more into it like you talked about. UCF really hasn't been able to cover big numbers this season like they have the last, 4 or 5 years, really, ever since Scott Frost got there. UCF was one of the best bets in all of college football in terms of ATS record mid-major Matt, but not this year. They're not covering the big spreads. A lot of that due to their defense. This is a team that had, 10 guys off of their 2 deep on the defensive side opt out of this season, and they've had injuries on top of that. So this is a roster where they're not really going full, front foot forward with their best players on the roster like they will likely next year if all the kids stay. So this isn't really the same UCF team, and we're seeing it in their spread record. So I'm not really looking to lay 25 points here, mid-major Matt.
So I'll add this, and this is where, once again, you could potentially get some value. We know what the total is. It's around 67.5. Well, if you want to milk a point of value here, the team totals are 45.5 for Central Florida and 20.5 for South Florida. That adds up to 66. Now, it depends on which way you think about it. Do you think that extra point comes from South Florida, or do you think it comes from Central Florida? I like South Florida to score over 20.5. I think if you do get some sort of quote-unquote letdown, they'll be on the UCF side. And if USF has improved offensively, I think 20.5 is worth a look there. Heck, I think 45.5 is worth a look also for the over for Central Florida. If they come focused in terms of the offense and they just come quick strike, you're going to see plenty of possessions in this game. So as much as of a piece of this over as you can get, whether it's the team totals or the game over, that's what I'm looking at for this one.
It's tough to bet USF, though. I'll tell you, mid-major Matt, how many losses in a row for this team? You almost can't even count them. But yeah, I guess you could look to the fact they've scored more than 20 points in 4 of their last 5 games. I mean, we're really searching for positives here with the USF offense. I guess that is something that could point towards the over. If you had to make a bet on this total, you would bet it over?
I would bet the game over. I would bet the USF total over. I'd bet the UCF total over and kind of get as much of it as possible. And then hope for, as we get closer, if Mackenzie Milton is playing, we find out. Because, look, what I was saying here, Drew, is if Mackenzie Milton somehow is playing the whole game, which I don't think is going to happen, if he's going to start the game, which I don't think is going to happen, that makes a difference. I don't want a rusty quarterback out there just playing for the victory tour and the remembrance tour of what he used to be at UCF. If he's going to get a ceremonial fourth quarter drive, that's different. But if he's going to start or if he's going to play a half or a quarter, that makes a difference because he's rusty. I'm sure he'll be fine, but I would like to know, or at least get an inkling, if it's more ceremonial or it's more like, hey, he's starting, Dylan Gabriel knows, and he's fine with it.
Mid-Major Matt, great breakdown there. The war on I-4 to start off the Friday, November 27th card. I'll tell you, going simultaneously at 3:30 Eastern, we got number 2 ranked Notre Dame at number 25 ranked North Carolina Tar Heels. This one on ABC. So you're going to need multiple TVs here, guys, because we got a lot going in the 3:30, 4 o'clock time range here on Black Friday. We got Notre Dame -5. On the road here, 68 the total here, Mid-Major Matt. I like the Irish in this one, laying kind of a dead number in college football, -5, not so dead in the NFL. But they do have issues up front. Their center might not play. I believe their guard is out as well. So in terms of their offensive line, not going, not fully healthy here. That is something that worries me. They are going to have to win by a little bit of margin here on the road. I do lean Notre Dame though, Mid-Major Matt. How do you feel?
So it's interesting when you look at the Irish. You mentioned it. They're down 2 offensive linemen, but I don't know if North Carolina's pass rush is good enough to take advantage of it. Both of these teams coming off an off week. Notre Dame beat the BC 45-31. Very impressive 2 weeks ago. They've scored 40 or more in 3 of their last 4. And then 2 weeks ago, you have a North Carolina team that played that back and forth, arcade game like 59-53 contest with Wake Forest. They've scored 40 or more in each of their last 4 games, and Sam Howell has just been amazing. And the best part of the North Carolina offense is that they're running the ball too with the Williams kid and the Carter kid, and they're doing whatever they want to. But how much of that is a product of the bad defenses they're facing? The big thing for North Carolina is they may have their top 2 corners back for this one. Storm Duck, one of the best college football names in America, he's practicing with the team, and he's a game-time decision. Kyler McMichael, also a cornerback, a starting cornerback, is expected to play. I think that makes a little bit of a difference here. Notre Dame's wide receivers aren't the best part of their team. I mean, I like their various tight ends. I think their running back is obviously really good. But if you can get North Carolina's top 2 corners back, which Storm Duck is a game-time decision, I think that Carolina becomes a little bit of a live dog. Now, you wait maybe and see if you can milk another point or two. Notre Dame is a public team, so you wait and try and get a little bit of momentum there in terms of the line. Notre Dame's team total is 34.5. North Carolina's is 30.5. Once again, that's 65, and you just said the total 68, so there's 3 points difference. And that's just something I'm telling people to look out for, is that the team totals are a little more stagnant than the game totals are. So you can find some value. If you think, and this is one of those choose your own adventure things, if you think North Carolina is going to move the ball, you could take the North Carolina team total over instead of the game over. If you think Notre Dame is, then you could go that route as well. So it'll be a fun game, Drew. I'll be interested to see about Storm Duck. I think that makes a big difference for this North Carolina team if he plays in this game, because he would be the number 1 corner and match up with some of those guys out wide for Notre Dame.
The band is on the field, Mid-Major Matt. That's the next game up. Stanford at Cal, 4 o'clock Eastern, 1 o'clock Pacific kick here. 52 being the total. Competitively priced game here, Mid-Major Matt. -1 in the hook, depending where you're shopping. That's Cal at home in Berkeley.
Yeah, I don't have as good of a read in the Pac-12 as others probably do, but I'll give you what I know at least. The Cal won this game on the road last year. As you said, they're a slight favorite in this one, and they lost last week 31-27 at Oregon State. They lost to UCLA 34-10, and then you got Stanford, who's had the week off, and they lost 2 games, 35-32 to Colorado and 35-14 to Oregon. I mean, Cal's defense is what they prided themselves on, at least last year, and it's just not as good as it has been. But is Stanford's offense good enough to take advantage? That's the big question here. I would say, do you have any thoughts on this game, Drew?
I've already lost on Cal once. I don't think something's up with the Cal team from last year, because I had them pegged as being pretty good. All the returning starters, well coached, returning their quarterback, the whole bit. They didn't look good in UCLA. I lost money on them there, so I've stayed away from them. I don't know. I if you made me choose, I'd go back on Cal here, but it's always tough, as sports bettors out there know, when you lose on a team, to go back to the well with them. That's always a risky bet, and I doubt I get there. But if you made me bet it, I'd be on the Bears.
Right, and remember, there's a bunch of games on Friday, and once again, and not only that, there's going to be college basketball on Friday and everything, so this is an easy pass, at least in terms of my eyes, to pass this sort of game, because once again, the odds makers have to put odds out on everything. We do not have to bet every single game.
Mid-major, Matt, this is a weekend of a lot of rivalries here, and we got another one, the Civil War up in Oregon. We got Oregon at Oregon State. I believe they play for the Platypus Trophy. I'm not sure. I think it's the duck bill with the beaver tail. I could be wrong on that. Any Oregon listeners out there, feel free to chime in below on the comments or in the chat box. It is the Oregon Ducks, minus 13 and a hook. Favorites here, 64 being the total in Corvallis, Matt.
And by the way, they're no longer referring to this as the Civil War in this PC time there, Drew. So we have to, it's just like it's no longer the world's largest cocktail party, even though it really is.
I will not abide by that, Matt.
I won't either.
The cocktail party is staying on this podcast.
Exactly. I just said it again, so it doesn't really matter what they think. So I like what I've seen from Oregon State. I kind of do. You know, this is another one of those teams like we talked about in New Mexico that's lost all these close games, and they're trying to get over the hump, and they finally do. Now, New Mexico hasn't gotten over the hump, but Oregon State did. They beat Cal last week 31-27. They lost 27-21 to Washington. They lost 38-28 to Wazoo. So they're in all these games. Jamar Jefferson's been amazing. 120 yards rushing against one Washington school, 133 against the other, 196 last week. If Oregon State can grind some drives out here, Oregon's defense is not very good. You look at what happened last week. UCLA had their backup quarterback in, and they got 35 points, and they nearly won the game. If Chip Kelly takes some knees at halftime, we could be talking differently about that game. You look at the 29 Wazoo put up. So there are points to be had here. I don't know if I'm ready to say that they'll cover this number. I think the over is probably the better look, Drew, because Oregon just scores 38 against UCLA, 43 against Wazoo, 35 against Stanford. To me, the over is the better play in this game, but I wouldn't fault people if they wanted to go to the window with Oregon State because I think they have some confidence. It's a home game. They only lost 24-10 last year. It's a frustrating series for Oregon State that they'll be excited to play for this game. They've lost 3 straight in 11 of their last 12 or 12 of their last 13. So I don't think Oregon State's going to win this game. I think the over is the better play here, but I also wouldn't mind people if they wanted to get to the window on Oregon State, especially if this gets to that 14 number or 14 and a half.
In mid-major, Matt, I believe that the college football rankings came out last night. Oregon, I know a lot of the Pac-12 fans out there feel like, out here in Vegas feel they were kind of shafted. Do you have any initial kind of thoughts here with the college football rankings if you got to look at them?
Well, so I would say this. We're going to start seeing teams with these that are going to go for style points. It's unfortunate Cincinnati lost their game against Temple because they would have put up 70 on Temple this weekend. Now they just have 2 games against Tulsa unless they decide to add another game. Everybody's talking about how Cincinnati and BYU should schedule each other. Here's the problem. Cincinnati doesn't need BYU. BYU needs Cincinnati. So if I'm Cincinnati and you're BYU and you say to me, I want to play you, I say, okay, come to Cincinnati and play this game or else. And,
sure.
And BYU is going to say no because they'd rather play a home game. BYU is a little lower than I thought. And I think that there's not a game in this country they could schedule short of Ohio State, that's going to help them. Like everybody's saying, well, they should play, a Pac-12 school. Well, clearly no one has respect for the Pac-12 as it is. So BYU's kind of out of luck. And I'll be interested to say, look, and I don't care about pissing people off. Ohio State at 4, I don't agree with. I don't agree with it. They're 3-0. And they've played their toughest game last week, and they looked okay. Their offense looked national championship caliber. Their defense looked terrible. And so they're going to go on the rest of their schedule, play crappy teams, and then they're going to get to the Big Ten championship and hopefully play an undefeated Northwestern, maybe. But Northwestern didn't exactly get a ton of love. So to me, I would have put that second SEC school in, and I know that would have caused outrage across the country. But to me, the SEC teams have done a whole lot more. Texas A&M beat Florida. That win is better than any win that Ohio State has. So to me, I would have put them in. Then look, that would have pissed everybody off, but we're still a couple weeks away, Drew. But to me, I just don't think Ohio State belongs in the playoff right now. I think they still need to work their way in. Even if they go undefeated, I mean, you need to have some sort of quote unquote penalty for playing less games than the other teams. I think Cincinnati on a neutral field beats Ohio State. I do. Of course, that when I say that Desmond Ridder would have a terrible game, and then everybody would laugh at me because they'd be like, oh, Desmond Ridder. But I think Cincinnati's defense is good enough to slow down Ohio State. I think Cincinnati's offense can certainly score points on Ohio State. So I was disappointed, but it was expected that these are the top 4, and most likely this will be the top 4 unless there's some upsets in the SEC.
Good stuff. Mid-Major Matt. Follow him on Twitter, guys, at Mid-Major Matt. We got a top 20 matchup here in the Big 12 up next. 12 noon Eastern kick, 9 a.m. Pacific, 15th ranked Iowa State at 20th ranked Texas Longhorns. We're seeing a pick'em price here, Mid-Major Matt. There are some -1s out there. That's towards the Cyclones as the short road favorite, 56.5 being the total in Austin.
This series has seen 5 straight unders. I think there's a chance for a 6th straight under this year. Iowa State won this game 23-21 last year. Iowa State looked really good. I mean, 45 points against Kansas State. The offense has scored 35 or more in 3 straight. Iowa State's defense has allowed the fewest yards per attempt in the Big 12. They're holding passing attacks to 229.8 yards per game, which is really good. And we know Texas has been off since the 7th, earlier this month. They beat West Virginia in that game 17-13, and West Virginia's defense is really good, and Iowa State's defense is really good. I think we could see an under here. Drew Ellinger is completing just 41.1% of his passes when pressured, and Texas's offensive line's not great, and Iowa State's got some big guys up front that's going to cause some pressure here. I think this is an under, Drew. I think it's hard to take an under in Big 12 games. But I think that Texas, with a little bit of a layoff, could be a little rusty. Maybe you want to go with a first half under here for this. And then I just think Iowa State's defense is good enough. I think Texas's defense is good enough. I think we could see, like, even if it's like a 31-24 game, that still goes under that number. So I think the under here, Drew, I think we continue this series of straight unders here and make it a 6 straight under in this series. Don't you think?
Yeah, looking towards the under in the Big 12. It's always tough, like you talked about, but you make some good cases towards the under of 56.5 in the Iowa State-Texas game. We got Nebraska versus Iowa up next, Mid-Major Matt. We're seeing the Iowa side, the Hawkeyes here, -13 in the hook at home, 53.5 being the total in Iowa City.
By the way, can I just comment real quick on what Ashley said on in the chat box about BYU? I agree that they shouldn't be in the top 10. And I think they're in a terrible position in terms of, if everybody saw what their schedule was originally. I mean, they had Michigan State, they had, Pac-12 teams, Big 10 teams. They had a schedule that if they would have gone 10-0 in that schedule, they definitely would have been in the top 5. So unfortunately, it's a product of the whole COVID era and everybody canceling things. So you feel bad for them in that respect. But yeah, I agree. Strength of schedule, and they shouldn't really be in the top 10, even though they've crushed literally everybody they played. All right, that was me stalling because I really don't want to talk about Nebraska. Nebraska's terrible. My God. How do you lose at home to Illinois 41-23? And how do you only beat Penn State by 7? I feel like we need to judge all the Big 10 teams by how much they beat Penn State by. You got Iowa, who won by 20 at Penn State. Thank God. I actually was considering – we talked about it. This was one of our games. I said Penn State's got to have some pride. They got to cover this number. My God, they didn't. They were terrible once again. Iowa's defense has shown up. They're allowing 35 points the last 3 weeks. I think Iowa's defense has been an improvement. I still don't love the Petrus kid, and I understand I can't keep saying it because they keep putting up points, but I think eventually when it matters, he's going to show up and be small. But I can't back Nebraska here. There is some injury news. Dedrick Mills, the running back, Cam Jurgens, the center, practicing this week. They're hoping both will play. Jurgens had some bad snaps last game, and certainly he's a guy that's important for that offensive line. We don't know who the quarterback is. We don't know if it's McCaffrey or Adrian Martinez. Here's a fun fact for you. Last Saturday was the 30th time Nebraska has allowed 38 points in a Big 10 game. The Huskers allowed that many points 21 times in their entire history in the Big 12. So let that soak in. I don't know how many years it's been since Nebraska joined the Big 10. It's probably been 5 or 6. 30th time they've given up this many points, and they only did 21 times in the Big 12. I lean Iowa here. I think Iowa can name their score here. Nebraska's terrible. It's ridiculous, and I can't back Nebraska. I don't love backing Iowa here, but since you guys want leans and thoughts on every game, I think I would lean to Iowa here, especially under 2 touchdowns.
All right, Mid-Major Matt, we're getting a little bit more in your comfort zone here with the last 3 games on Friday, all of the mid-major variety. 151, 152, the rotation number here, 4 o'clock Eastern, 1 o'clock Pacific kick. Wyoming, the Cowboys at the UNLV running Rebels, 52 the total, -16 in the hook at Allegiant Stadium.
Wyoming won this game 53-17 last year. Here's the thing. This could be a very good first half under or a first quarter under. Wyoming hasn't played since November 6th. And so with a running offense like they have, a precision-based offense, I feel like you're going to have to, it's going to take a little time to get back to normal. They lost that game 34-24 at Colorado State. We all know they're a run-based offense with the Valladay kid. Levi Williams does throw the ball a little bit when they ask him to, but they much prefer to matriculate the ball down the field using the rush. When you look, there's an interesting stat that UNLV has had their most success passing the ball on first down. Wyoming has had their least amount of success defending the first down, 75.6% completion percentage on first downs alone through the first 3 games against Wyoming. That's something, a tendency that who knows if the coaching staff is looking at that. UNLV last played 2 weeks ago, essentially, when they lost to San Jose State. Their offense isn't very good. I watched the UNLV Fresno game. Max Gillum is like an adventure every snap, whether he's running around or he's throwing the ball into the stands or whatever. I mean, he has flashes, Drew, but like I can't consistently count on him. And then if they change quarterbacks on offense, UNLV has had 14 chances in the red zone, 5 field goals, 6 touchdowns. That's not a good rate overall. It's 78.6%, but the touchdowns is not terrible. It's just under 50%. UNLV's defense has allowed opponents to have 24 trips to the red zone, 22 times they've gotten points, 13 touchdowns, 9 field goals. So 54.2% they're holding opponents to touchdowns in the red zone. That's 31st in the league right now. That's 31st in the country right now. To me, I'm looking at an early under here. I don't think either of these two teams play with that much pace. And both of them being off, I think, means there's going to be a little bit of time needed for them to get back into things. You know, I was reading some quotes from Craig Bohl, the Wyoming coach, who said it's been very tough on his kids to not play and to kind of stay warm and everything and stay ready. And so to me, it's an early under in this game, maybe capitalizing on some rustiness from Wyoming and UNLV, who've both been off at least 2 weeks.
You know, and you bring up Craig Bohl. I think he's one of the more underrated coaches in all of college football. So I think he's going to have his guys ready to play better than kind of like other teams going through the COVID issues of 2020. So that's one thing that makes me look towards the Cowboys here. Plus UNLV, even though, you know, they're playing right down the road from where I'm talking right now, I want to root for him in Major Matt. Like you talked about, quarterback play really hasn't been there. I mean, overall talent of the roster, it's not great. You know, you got to know what you're getting into with the Rebels. It's not one of the better teams in the Mountain West in terms of talent level, but do want to give a shout out to you, mid-major Matt, man, seeing it well. College football team totals 61% on the year. That's 30-18, 57-41. That's 58% since week 2 of college football, guys. He obviously knows a lot of information about college football. Hearing him talk, he's also producing some winners up over at sportsmemo.com and in the professional ranks, 10-2 in his last 12 NFL team totals. So short term in the NFL, seeing it well, mid-major Matt, and heck, a little bit longer term here in college football, you're doing very well, man.
Yeah, I think what I found is that there's an angle here when, you know, everybody wants to bet the spreads and the totals, the game totals, but there are other ways to attack these games, certainly teasers and things like that in the NFL, the team totals, the props and everything like that. So I like to think of myself as trying to find the angles other than the spread and the total, so that way people can get their edges. And in college football, you know, the best teams score a ton of points. And as I said, Drew, look, we in some of the team totals, you can exploit differences from the game totals because the game totals can constantly move, but the team totals, they're just going to juice it. So you're just going to get, you know, more juice, but they're going to keep the numbers the same. So I feel like there's some angles there that I've been able to exploit. And, you know, unfortunately I had my first losing week since week 1 last week, but I'm ready to bounce back. Got some stuff that I'm ready to unveil probably in the next day or two for this weekend's college football card.
Bounce back fashion from mid-major Matt. And also we got college basketball starting tonight, mid-major Matt. And I see you got a free play up here. Guys, you can check it out at sportsmemo.com. East Tennessee State at Abilene Christian. Looks like Abilene Christian -1 in the hook. Is that what you're interested in?
It already won, Drew. That was the very first game of the year. It was the 11 a.m. special. First game. And guess what? We got it 1.5. It closed around 7.5 too. So we beat that and they won the game rather easily. So free play winner. 2-1 start to the college basketball season so far. But of course, we are in day 1 of 4,000 of college basketball. I know that's your specialty. So I might buy one of your packages, Drew, so I can see, because you are the man when it comes to college basketball.
I've had a little bit of success. Hopefully can keep that rolling. I'm not in action. I've gone over my numbers here, mid-major Matt, the last 4 years, which have been good. For whatever reason in November, I'm under 50%. So I start off the season a little bit slower. It's not like past performance indicative of future results, but you always want to keep that in mind where you do well, where you don't. And a lot of it comes into, the information that you're gathering here. It's not like I'm at the practices watching the teams. It's all hearsay. You're hoping of what the blog writers are saying about the team and using that. I'd rather go from what my eyes say, what the numbers say, the pace, the metrics, because I normally bet totals, mostly totals here. And so I like to get a couple games under my belt before I start firing away. I don't know if you have anything on that philosophy, though.
No, you're right. I mean, this was so last night I did all my stuff for the card, and I had 30 leans, and I'm like, I can't give out 30 leans to my clients, and B, I can't, I can't play all these games. But you're right. When you looked, especially, I feel like usually the opening day or two of college basketball, there's a lot less games. Tonight, it felt like there were 70-ish games. And so I sat there, I was like, all right, I'm picking my best 5, and I'll kick myself when on the ones that I left off that wins, but at least you'll know mentally, like, okay, as Ralph Michaels always says, and I'd like to use his phrase, it's better to leave off a winner than to play a loser and have somebody lose units on it. So it was very tough to get down to the top 5 that I went with today, but it's great to have college basketball, and you definitely dipping your toe is better. And as I also said, Drew, like, college basketball is the perfect sport. Find 3 conferences. If you live in the South, play the ACC, SEC, and whatever, Big East, Conference USA. Focus on those 3 conferences. And then as you feel like you have a handle on those, maybe pick up another one. And then that way, because look, there's 30-something conferences. I think I do about 15, 16 of them. And some of them I focus on more than others. But if you look at this board as a whole, that you're going to get overwhelmed. So just basically, narrow down and then expand your way out.
True. I mean, the 11 to 10 will kill you. So guys always want to watch the volume and not bet too much on any one day. We do have 2 games left here, mid-major, Matt. Next one up, battle of directional Michigan schools here. We got Central Michigan at Eastern Michigan, 59 being the total, with the Chippewas laying a full touchdown on the road.
I know. Sad we didn't have Maction yesterday, because it would have been perfect. How great would it have been if we had Maction yesterday and let the kids go home for Thanksgiving?
I can't believe they took it off. I mean, not only was our Maction show killing it, and then we didn't have it, and that was one thing, but I love watching Maction on Tuesday and Wednesday nights. It really didn't make any sense. They had one more week to do this, have full-fledged, everybody watching it, and sure enough, they let the boat sail. They missed out, mid-major, Matt.
Right, exactly, and that's the best part of Maction, is that everybody watches it. Now, I can understand, all right, if they wanted to play all of them on Tuesday, that's fine. Give everybody a chance to go home on Wednesday. That's fine, but they should have played yesterday. So, but then we have this game. So, Eastern Michigan, let me tell you, I watched that Eastern Michigan game last week. We talked about it on the show, you, me, and Rob Vino. I was so disappointed because everywhere I went on, I was like, Eastern Michigan's a pest. They're going to be fine. I couldn't believe the play calls that Chris Creighton was using. The read option, they barely used. They ran the ball too much on first down. It was too much run, pass. It was just, I was stunned by what I saw from Eastern Michigan, because there were times when they were completing deep passes. They did have some turnovers, which caused some problems. We did hit the over for the team total for Eastern Michigan and the game total. That was good. So that was fun. I still somewhat believe in this Eastern Michigan team. Now, they're going to have to run the ball a little bit more, because the Toledo game, they ran 30 times for 35 yards. Central Michigan has got to be a little disappointed after the way they played against Western Michigan at home, losing that game 52-44. They got that early lead, and then all of a sudden it was an avalanche from Western Michigan, and then it was back and forth and everything. Central Michigan has looked good. They beat Ohio by 3. They beat Northern Illinois by 30. We still don't know how good this Central Michigan team is. They've won the home team has won 5 straight in this series. Khalil Pimpleton, they used him a lot out of the backfield, Drew. That was pretty interesting how Pimpleton was a running back for a lot of plays. Heck, he was even a quarterback for a couple plays. I think he threw a couple passes. I like the variety that Central Michigan has. I'll probably look at the team total over for them, which is around 33.5. I don't know if I can quit Eastern Michigan, though. I don't know if I can. The problem is, if they're calling plays like last week, Drew, they've got no shot. If they open up the playbook for Hutchison, I think they've got a shot. So it could be a live bet for me as well. I really do want to bet Eastern Michigan, but last week soured me so much on them. because they didn't use their potential. They didn't use Tanner Canoe as much as I would have liked. So this is going to be a live bet game for me, I think. I want to see how Eastern Michigan approaches this first drive or two. I think they have the offense to take advantage of a bad Central Michigan defense, but I got to see it first. I don't want this run, pass, punt to be their first two drives, and then all of a sudden they're down 10-0, 14-0 here. So pregame, I'm looking at the Central Michigan team total over. In-game, I'm hoping to bet Eastern Michigan, but I need to see something first from them early on.
Mid-major Matt, you bring up Pimpleton. That guy is awesome. I think he's the best player in the whole conference. I was watching the game because I bet on Central Michigan, and I was like, get that man the ball like any way possible. Put him at running back, wide receiver. I was even thinking they should put him at quarterback and just have him run right and run left, man. That was some pretty good stuff. He's almost got, next level potential.
Yeah, it was him, and it's either him or Eskridge from Western Michigan, who I think are the best players.
Yeah,
well, obviously Jared Patterson when he's facing Bowling Green and running for 300 yards a pop against them. So those are probably your top three guys. And then the Hall kid at Ball State's really good. I mean, there's a ton of good offensive talent in this conference, but you're right. He's definitely one of the top five guys. Him and Lewis, that's a great back. Central Michigan's offense should do their part in this thing, and that's the only reason why I wouldn't take it over is if Eastern Michigan is blasé, then this over's not going to hit. So another reason why I'm waiting in game to bet on this one in terms of the side.
And we got one game left here, guys. We did have the Apple Cup, Washington State postponed, San Diego State, Fresno State postponed, and Southern Miss UAB unfortunately postponed. Those were three games supposed to go on Friday's action. So Matt was supposed to break them down. That is the reason we're not talking about them. But we do have one game left, and it is a good one for this section. We'll also get Mid-Major Matt's most confident play here. But check out Mid-Major Matt, guys. A reminder, sportsmemo.com. He's seen it well in football. College basketball is just starting. Good handicapper there. And you can also get a Black Friday special here. BF999 takes $1,000 off of the 1-year all access package. Sportsmemo.com, Mid-Major Matt. We got UMass at Liberty up here. Mid-Major Matt, we're seeing Liberty, the Flames, -37 at home, 56.5 being the total. UMass, anytime we're talking about the Minutemen, you got to think, is this the worst program in all of Division I, Mid-Major Matt?
Yeah, I mean, you don't even have to think it. They are. They've scored 10 points offensively all year. And last week I gave out the FAU team total over. FAU, this says more about FIU than it did about FAU because FAU struggled to score against UMass, and it was a 24-2 game, which seems very much like a UMass game here. So you got Liberty, who's coming off a terrible loss to NC State. There might be a hangover here, but I mean, Malik Willis is going to run wild on UMass. This is a Liberty first half. This is a Liberty team total over. This is as much as you can on Liberty here. I know the number's pretty big. And it's funny because the over-under essentially is this. Do you think that you get 10 points from UMass? And because if you look, the team total is Liberty 47.5, UMass is 9.5. I don't know if I can get anything from UMass. Liberty's defense isn't great, but UMass's offense is brutal. The kid, I think they call him Koch. It's Koch. He was terrible. They brought another kid in. He was terrible. There's a third kid. He's terrible. And the fourth kid, they moved back to tight end because he was terrible. To me, this is a name your score kind of game. Liberty's first half is 27.5 points. I think that's a gimme right there. I think Liberty scores 4 touchdowns, maybe even the first quarter, and you're getting 27.5 for the first half. I think you're looking at for a confident play for me, Drew. Over 27.5 for Liberty in the first half is probably the most confident thing here. Liberty won this game 63-21 last year, but of course, Drew, that was with our favorite quarterback. You remember who that is, right? The Liberty quarterback we love.
Buckshot Calvert.
Buckshot Calvert. That's right. Buckshot Calvert was the quarterback last year. And I don't know how Liberty gave up 21 points to UMass in that game last year, but I think that's not going to happen. There's no chance that Liberty gets 21. So I think this is a name your score kind of game for Liberty. I know that there's going to be some frustration and some sadness. I'm glad it's a home game for Liberty here. But to me, this is a pound out your frustrations on a bad UMass team that's ready to go home. Let's be honest. UMass probably shouldn't have come back. They've played 4 games all on the road against teams that they had no shot against, and they showed it. The 41-0 at Georgia Southern, the 51-10 to Marshall, the 24-2 game at Florida Atlantic. At least they played in Florida, so they were in nice weather. But then they come to Liberty, one of the nicest underrated campuses in America, and I think Liberty names their score here. 27.5 over in the first half for Liberty. They may score 28 in the first quarter. So that seems like a gimme. You get 2 quarters to get that number.
Yeah, mid-major Matt. I was just checking the weather. I mean, just to make sure it wasn't a downfall with a lot of wind or something. But I have no interest in betting any type of bet that is with the Minutemen in this one. I think Liberty and Hugh Freeze and company, Malik Willis really takes it to him. So team total over. I would even look to lay the points both first half and full game for Liberty. So for the record-keeping books here, mid-major Matt, most confident play for the section is the Liberty team total first half.
First half, over 27.5 for the first half. I think that they can get that in the first quarter. And, oh, yes, Drake won outright. That's another win for me tonight because Drake went into Manhattan, beat Kelly and Vegas's Kansas State Wildcats. So a good start to the season here, Drew. I like it. Even though it's her birthday. I'm sad it's her birthday, but Kansas State lost outright. So that was fun. I had Drake.
All right. He's been Major Matt, guys. That does it for the Thursday, Friday games here. We're bringing Teddy covers starting in about 60 seconds for the next 12-ish games or so at the top of the Saturday card. So stay with us. If you're watching live on WagerTalk, we'll be starting up with Teddy covers here just momentarily. Check out Mid-Major Matt at sportsmemo.com. Guys,